Hello, welcome back to the You at Your Best podcast. I'm your host, Morgan. So, for this week's episode, I wanted to talk about saying no to the things that don't align with you. And whenever I'm talking about this, I'm not just talking about saying no to other people. Of course, that can be a part of it, but I'm also talking about telling yourself no if you feel pulled to do something that you know doesn't align with who you are or your values or who you want to be in the life that you want. And this can mean telling yourself no whenever you want to go out and buy things because you maybe just have this itch to go shopping, and I get that feeling, but telling yourself no during those times because you know that in the long run they don't really help and they don't really bring you closer to who you want to be in the life that you want. And also telling yourself yes whenever you're a little scared to spend money on something that's a little bit more on the expensive side because you know that it's going to benefit you. So whenever we say no to the things that don't align with us, we're actually saving room for the things that do align with us. And a lot of the time we don't even know what it is that we want in life and what it is that we think aligns with us, but we a lot of the time do know the things that we don't want and the things that don't feel like who we are and don't sound like us. So saying no to those things that you know aren't bringing you closer to what you want, that can be a really great start. So it's important to learn to say no. And the first thing I want to talk about is saying no to people in your life. This is probably the hardest for me and something that I don't do very often. And if I do say no, I make sure that I say it in a kind and respectful way. If I can, try to show appreciation. Of course, you don't have to do any of this, but for me, I feel a lot better whenever I do and whenever I take the time to let that person know that I'm not trying to hurt their feelings in any way. And that can mean something as simple as if someone asks me to go somewhere with them and I know that it doesn't benefit me in any way, then I can say no. And I don't mean that in a narcissistic, everything's about me, my whole world revolves around me, the entire world revolves around me. I don't mean it like that. I mean it in our friendships are supposed to be beneficial to us, even if that just means giving us joy. And if I'm around someone who doesn't bring me joy, then I say no. And it's hard. And I know I talk mostly on this podcast about usually not saying no to people and usually not setting those boundaries, because I don't think setting boundaries or telling people you can't do this to me or you can't do that to me, just telling people how to treat you, I think that just brings more stress. I think we should just observe and watch how people act and not let the way that they act and their own issues affect us. But in certain situations, I will say no. For example, I have someone who asked me to go with her to her doctor's appointments all the time, but being around that person is kind of draining for me. And I still go around that person and I still enjoy being around them for the most part, but honestly, the idea of spending so much time at a doctor's appointment with them, especially they want me to bring my baby and all three of us just kind of go together, and that's just not something that I'm willing to do. So make sure that you really pay attention to yourself and the things that really bother you, even if you know that it's a trigger that maybe isn't fair to that person. If it's going to trigger you, saying yes to them more strain on your relationship with that person, which doesn't help anything and doesn't benefit you in any way. And I think it's important that we notice ourselves. I've been guilty of, in the past, whenever I would hear this kind of advice, I took it as I just say no to that person every single time. I don't create a relationship with that person. I see that person as horrible and victimize myself in a way. And that didn't help me either. That only just put me into a victim mindset, which is a whole other thing that is just negatively affecting our mental health whenever we do that. So I like really pay attention to myself, and if I believe that I can go with that person and I will be okay, then I will. But I also know my limits, and I know that if I will have a really hard time being around that person in that moment, like my other example, going to that person's doctor's appointments with them, like that's just not gonna work out. And if I would feel better being at home, then I'm gonna stay at home. But also remembering to include other people and be understanding whenever other people do want to spend time with you, and not kind of making it this whole thing of like, my life is the only thing that matters. What's going on with me is the only thing that matters. Because of course, I know a lot of people will argue and say that it is your life, so like you are the most important part and you are at the center of it. And I used to agree with that, but at this point in my life, I've realized that like we have so much more to life than just ourselves. And if you really look at it as like just yourself, or protecting your peace so much that you're completely isolated and lonely, like I don't think that really helps any of us. That just makes us more miserable in different ways. I think we need balance whenever it comes to that kind of stuff. And a lot of us don't have it, I think, because a lot of things on social media are so black and white. Okay, and now I want to talk about saying no to things that don't align with your personal values. So if you value peace in your life, then don't say yes to going to a situation and being around people that don't bring you peace or that stress you out. And on top of that, don't start doing things that stress you out. Only focus on the things that bring you peace. And of course, sometimes you have to do things that stress you out. There's no getting around it. And in those situations, you can always do self-care afterwards. But if you can choose not to do something that stresses you out, then that will help you in so many ways. And an example of that could be if you notice that you really get stressed out whenever you do a certain activity, stop doing that activity. And I know like that's kind of, for some people that would just be like, well, yeah, duh, don't do that. But I know for me, a lot of my life, I would do things just because other people said that they liked it, or other people said that it worked for them. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And every single time I would try to do it, it never felt right for me. It never worked, but I just kept on doing it, even though it would stress me out. And that can mean like, one time I tried reading poetry and I don't like reading poetry. And honestly, I was just stressed out the whole time. Or doing activities with other people just to make them happy, even though I really didn't enjoy it and it was extremely draining for me. So that's a value of mine, is I value peace. I value a peaceful life. And that also means not engaging with people who kind of make me feel like I'm not at peace. People who are overly dramatic, if I'm being completely honest, about things that don't matter. People who get angry and pissed off at people for their opinions, like having separate opinions. Like around those people, I don't engage with them in that kind of conversation. That's like a personal boundary that you can have, even though I don't really love the term boundary, because I feel like the internet has kind of made boundaries into something that they're not. But if you're like looking at what boundaries actually are, a personal boundary could be you don't let yourself engage with those people who are acting like that. At least in those types of conversations, you can talk about something else. You can excuse yourself. And for me, a lot of the time, like if my boyfriend is there, I'll tell him ahead of time, like, I don't think I want to talk about this certain thing with them. Can I just let you know if I need to leave the room? And then both of us will leave the room, or I will excuse myself to go to the bathroom and he will handle it for me, which is such an amazing feeling. And then some examples of some values that some people may have that they need to make sure the situations that they're in align with those, or the situations that they put themselves in align with those values. I'm not someone who values honesty very much, because I believe that if you're protecting yourself, it's totally okay to be dishonest. And even if that means protecting yourself in ways that maybe the other person won't understand. For me, protecting myself in ways that a lot of neurotypical people may not understand. But if that's a value for you, maybe not engaging so much with someone who is dishonest a lot. Or for me, a really big value is compassion and people who are compassionate and understanding and good people. If I'm having a conversation with someone and they're just kind of bashing other people and being really unkind for no reason, saying no to myself whenever I feel that pull to engage with those conversations so that I am able to fit in is a huge part of saying no to what doesn't align with me, because that doesn't align with my values and who I want to be as a person. That could also mean choosing to respond kindly whenever I'm frustrated with another person. With my baby, I feel like that's a really great example. As she gets older, and even now, just reminding myself that, yes, I'm frustrated right now, but does it align with my values to act in a certain way? And if I do act negatively, because I'm only human and I'm sure I will sometimes, apologizing afterwards because I didn't act in a way that I wanted to be. And something that I really struggle with is doing that with other people. I can do that with my baby, I can do that with my boyfriend, but whenever it comes to other people, it's really hard for me to sit down and have that conversation with them because it's scary. And of course, that's something that we all struggle with, is fear. But if I want to do things that align with me, and if I want to say no to myself in that way, I tell myself that I can't just pretend like it never happened. As scary as it is to confront those people or talk to them, I can't just move on from the situation. I can't do that because I know that my higher self would be incredibly disappointed, and I don't want to be that type of person. And I'm not that type of person. I want to be who I am. Another one could be if you value your looks. A lot of people say that people who value their looks are just surface level people, and I think to a certain extent that can be true because I used to be like that. But if it's a part of your values as a whole and not the entirety of who you are, then I think it's totally okay for that to be important to you. So if you value looking good, say no to yourself whenever you want to go out looking poorly. Like if you're tired and you just want to go out in your pajamas or whatever, say no to yourself because you know that it's important to you that you look like yourself and you look a certain way. And that's totally reasonable. Another thing is if you know that you want to save money, for example, telling yourself no because it doesn't align with you and it doesn't align with what you want in this life and the life that you want to create. So if you feel the urge to buy something, like I was saying earlier, that feeling that we get whenever it's like we just have to go shopping and it's like an urge that you can't let go of, tell yourself, like, it's really hard going through this urge. I understand that. Be compassionate with yourself. Don't be mean to yourself. But also tell yourself no. Like, you cannot buy that thing that you don't need. And also, I've noticed, like, it's a lot easier to tell yourself no whenever you remind yourself of what your values are and you think about the things that you actually want. You think about, like, I want this specific house and I need to save money for that house. Even if that means telling yourself no to something really small, like a $3 random toy that you're never going to use and you just think it's cool. That's something that my boyfriend and I both really struggle with too. Like, I want to be transparent. We both have ADHD, so it's like whenever you notice something that you want in the moment, sometimes you can't think about the future. But something that him and I both do, and we talked about this, is we try to look at it from an outside perspective. So like if we see another couple who is trying to save money and wants to save money for a house, we think about, like, would them making this purchase, as small as it is, be irresponsible if they want that money for a house or whatever it is that they want? We kind of just look at it as someone in the same situation as us and looking at it from an outside perspective and try to picture another couple. Doing that brings you back to reality. And then the last one that I want to talk about whenever it comes to saying no to the things that don't align with you is if someone is asking you to do something, or if you are feeling pulled to do something that your intuition is telling you is not going to work out, then say no to that thing. And I know that this can be really hard for a lot of us, especially people who deal with people pleasing, because we want to make other people happy. An example for me is a housing situation in the past. My boyfriend's grandmother, she was really helping us out with figuring out where we were going to live. And I said yes to something, even though my intuition was telling me to say no to it. And it ended up backfiring, and we don't live in that same place anymore. We live in an apartment now. So just really listen to yourself, because if you don't give your intuition the chance, then you may end up wasting money, because in that situation, we wasted a good amount of money that we could have been saving, which is okay. Like, we can't change the past, but that's just an example. Like, if your intuition is telling you that you don't need to do something, or if you just have a bad feeling about something, say no to that, because it doesn't align with you. It doesn't align with your values. There's something about it that is off and that is wrong. So say no to it and figure out what you need to do, especially if it's someone else trying to get you to do it, or if it's someone else in a way trying to control you to get you to do it. And I want to say now, like, those people doing that, I don't think poorly about them at all, but just take a step back and like really think, like, what can I do instead, especially if it feels wrong or if it feels like there's something off. And you're allowed to say no to those things. I know it's hard. I know it's scary. I know for me, it makes it a lot easier that I have a partner who is able to be there for me. I know not everyone has that, but if you do have a partner, talk to them about it. And don't talk to them in a way that's criticizing them, because it'll only, at least in my situation, only with my boyfriend, it only made him feel like he could never do anything right, and like he just didn't know how to help me because I was just criticizing him. Instead, just talk to your partner about how you're feeling, about what's going on. Try not to criticize them or blame them. Make it about you and your emotions and your feelings. And you can either think of a solution together, or they can think of a solution themselves and they can fix that situation for you. Or if you both need to do it together, whatever it is. As scary as it is being people pleasers, our partner can't always be there to help us with this stuff. But just remember that it's okay. You're allowed to say no. And even if it's scary in the moment, it's going to be 10 times scarier and 10 times harder if you wait for the future to say no, or if you say yes to them and do that thing knowing that it's not right for you and it doesn't align with you. Okay, that's it for this week's episode. This was a pretty short episode. I was frantically, I had to keep on pausing while recording so many times because my baby is just everywhere right now. She's been crying. If I leave, she's in that stage where if I leave her alone for more than 5 minutes, she starts screaming. And we're trying to get better with independent play, but it's really hard right now. So I've just been all over the place. Like right now I'm in the laundry room. I was in the bedroom at one point recording this. I was in the living room at one point recording this. But I think I'm going to go ahead and end this so that I can get her. So thank you so much for listening. See you next Sunday.